Okay, so today I just wanted to hop on here real quick and talk about the only way that I'm aware of that you can edit NRAW in Final Cut Pro. It also works for BRAW too, so if you have any interest in Blackmagic codecs, you have that as well. But if you've more recently purchased a Z8 or a Z9, you will know that you are not able to edit NRAW files in Final Cut. I don't think for Premiere Pro either. It would be only DaVinci Resolve. I use Final Cut. I've only used Final Cut. I was not interested in changing from Final Cut, so I am very happy to have found a transcoder that allows me to edit my NRAW files in Final Cut Pro. I originally found this company several years ago when I needed to edit some BRAW files, and I was really happy to see that they have a transcoder that has been updated to support NRAW and BRAW. So I am going to walk you through how to use it. If you're not interested in downloading the transcoder, this video might not be for you, but again, this is the only way to do it. So if you're a Final Cut user, I would recommend checking it out. Full disclosure too, they did not pay me for this at all. I had early access to their transcoder, which I didn't really use actually. I got it when everybody else could get it, but I think it's a great help for anybody that is looking to edit this in Final Cut, and it works really, really well. So I wanted to make this video for that. As you can tell, I'm not a YouTuber. What I mean by that is I don't have a nice set, so bear with me. This is going to be a lot of information, not a lot of glitz and glamour. I'm going to spend a lot of time on the computer, just doing some screen sharing of my workflow and how to use the transcoder. Real quickly, I wanted to touch upon why you would use raw video, or what is NRAW and all this other stuff. This could be a whole nother video, and if this goes well, I'll probably get into that too. But basically, NRAW is 12-bit raw video. Much like Apple ProRes in quality. I've tested it. Actually, I can't tell the difference between ProRes or NRAW. NRAW is lossless compressed, though, to 50% the file size of ProRes. So this is something that Nikon has come up with, and with their more recent acquisition or purchase of Red, I'm interested to see what codec they end up using and where their cameras go from there. The Z6 III looks amazing. I wish I would have bought that, not my Z8 to be honest, but that's a story for another day. If they go to a red codec or something like that, who really knows? But again, raw video, the benefits to that is, think about raw video, it's kind of like raw photos. It's an incomplete file. So essentially, a program like Final Cut is rendering that incomplete file as a complete file so you can edit it, and then it only becomes a complete file upon export. That's the same thing with a raw photo. If you think about it, it's an open code, and whatever your editing platform is that supports RAW can read that open code and give you video representation on your computer that you can then edit, and based on how you want to export it, that's when it becomes a real visual asset, even though really to a computer it's just a bunch of letters anyways. It's all these things have to, there's a code to read that stuff. That's where the transcoder comes into it. Unfortunately, the code Nikon has written doesn't play well with Final Cut. Companies like Canon and all those other companies, they've supplied stuff. Sony's fully compatible in Final Cut. Again, I'm off topic. So raw video being an incomplete code that your computer interprets allows you to manipulate the image or images in video case much more than something that has been compressed and completed. So think you have an open code that allows you more color grading and all this other stuff. So, and there are also some features in there, normally in the inspector panel, that you now have access to in the transcoder, like setting white balance and ISO sensitivity, are things that you can adjust after in post, which is kind of cool. So the benefit to shooting raw video, one big one is 12-bit color sampling. That's a billion more colors than 10-bit, and 2 billion more or something like that than 8-bit. So you have a lot more available color per pixel, which is definitely good. So 12-bit video is nice, and raw video enabling all the adjustability similar to photos, but not quite like photos. So that would be the benefits of shooting raw video. The downside to that is now the raw video is read from the sensor before any type of processing in camera happens to it. So a lot of people talk about noise and maybe not as sharp of an image in raw video. The sharpness is definitely something that you can see. Not always an issue, especially when you're dealing with somebody's like people's faces and stuff like that. You don't really want sharp, so it's okay that you can add sharpening in post. My personal experience with grain only is a factor, and it definitely is a factor if you blow your exposure. If your exposure is off and you need to raise your midtones a lot, you're going to have grainy crap, and you can denoise it with software, and it's just not good. I would highly recommend not. So compared to other 10 and 8-bit video, I think you can push the midtones and shadows a little bit more, and it just doesn't get grainy. So the downside would be soft image, grain, and then just general size. The size of the video is massive, and with the NRAW lossless compression, that definitely helps out. Like I said, 50% the file size as ProRes. It helps, but compared to some other 10-bit codecs, you will definitely feel the squeeze of that in there. So the pros and cons to shooting raw video, I think the pros far outweigh the cons. It's only a real issue if you've made some type of a technical error, but I would rather always shoot video in the highest possible codec available, because I can always export it however I want. And like how you're viewing this video, it's compressed to H.264, so I'm taking all that beautiful 12-bit video and I'm turning it into highly compressed stuff, and it doesn't matter because it still looks great. So that is the brief overview of raw video. I'm just rambling. We'll see what this looks like when we're all done, if it's good. And now we will get into the screen grabs of workflow, how to use the transcoder, how simple it is, and yeah, we'll go from there. Okay, so I've now switched over to my screen recording, and I will show you my workflow with using the transcoder. So the transcoder is available at the top of your screen. It also is available once you download it in the Final Cut Pro app. So I edit everything on an external hard drive, so I preemptively made a library that helps a little bit later, and I will now click on such. This is what the transcoder inspector panel looks like, or the app itself. So I have my Z8 hard drive connected to my computer. I'm going to come down to the bottom, and first I'm going to select the library. That's going to be the destination that I want, and then now I get to select where my media could be coming from. So I have 3 videos in here, one being the very project that we're going to be working on, but these are going to be the first little sample videos that I pull in. So I'm going to select all 3 of these videos, and it looks like blowing out crap. And you can see I have waveforms over here, and yes, you would think that I blew my exposure, but I actually didn't. So now I'm going to come over here. We have transcoding codecs. You get to select what you want. Technically, NRAW would be 422HQ. I usually run 422 just straight, so there could be some minor compression with that, but it's a little bit smaller. And I do want full resolution of the 4K that I shot. And this is where we're going to correct the exposure over here. So my color space, raw video it's HDR video to begin with. So if I'm transcoding this and bringing it into Final Cut at Rec 709, that is going to be the color spacing that I am limited to. So I want to change that to Rec 2020, and I'm going to change the gamma to N-log. And now all that color information comes back into the video right there. You can see my waveforms, everything's all gravy on that, and you can click through and see all the other ones. They've all changed alike. And again, the color information's back. It's log video, so it still looks flat, but the color information is there. I'm not sure exactly what that is. I always go for precise. And then here's your opportunity to, if you blew it on your color temperature or ISO, you have the availability to adjust that. And adjusting the ISO, you will see a decrease in that grain talking about, whereas if you're using other editing techniques or other components to Final Cut, you might get a little bit more of that. And again, color temperature is pretty awesome. You can't push it as much as a photo, but again, if you're on outdoor setting and you're really tight on a shot and a wide shot, you could have color temperature variances and stuff like that. It's nice to be able to adjust that after the fact. So we have the library selected. We have selected all of our import options right here. And now we're going to bring that into Final Cut, and all you have to do is click Import Selected. And once that window reappears, you can just close it down, and it is now loading. Okay, so all of my video has been transported and brought into Final Cut. So I'm gonna have a new project. Okay, I realized that I made a minor mistake, so I am going back into my library. Obviously, I've done more stuff. I have more stuff in my library, so that's why things have changed. But once you've transcoded your media and you have it in, that's your NRAW video right there. Once you have it in your library in Final Cut, something that you're going to want to do is click on your library itself, go to Modify, and make sure that you've selected a wide gamut library. That enables you to work in an HDR space and export HDR and all that other good stuff. Again, 12-bit NRAW is HDR video, so you should have this selected because you can always make SDR video out of that. And then when I make a project, I have one already selected. This is the NRAW test in 4K. My project settings, obviously 4K, 4K 30, ProRes, and I am using the wide gamut Rec 2020. That is important because it's Rec 2020 on the transcoding, and you're using a Rec 2020, which is wide gamut HDR video project right there. Sometimes, so before any of the base grade, this is what the footage looks like. That's your typical RAW, and you can see after the base grade. I didn't spend a lot of time doing that or messing with it because for all intents and purposes, this is my garden. It's really not that interesting. That's basically why I didn't spend that much time with it, and you get the picture. You can inspect this for noise all you'd like and all that other stuff. Something to consider as well in your inspector panel over here, you do have a color space override. So obviously if you're Rec 2020 and you're in a Rec 2020 project, you do not need to have any type of color space override. You can see selecting something like PQ 2020 or HLG drastically changes this as well. 709, not all that bad, but if you're running into some issues with how your video is coming in or looking or this, that, and other thing, that's something to look at. So in your inspector panel over here, you're going to want to make sure that you're on settings. So again, that is how you transcode your media. Once you get it into Final Cut, there's a couple things that you want to pay attention or make sure that you've done to optimize your media. And then here is an example of what the video is going to look like after the fact. I did shoot 4K ProRes as well. I think at the end of the video, I will provide similar clips so you can do a little pixel peeping or anything like that. So yeah, that is the process of transcoding and what it should look like in Final Cut. I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about HDR video and all that other stuff. So if you're interested in that, hold on a second and you'll get that. Okay, that was the walkthrough on how to transcode your media and essentially import NRAW video into Final Cut Pro using the Transcoder 2.0. I hope that all made sense for you. I did want to touch upon one more thing before I sign off of this, and that's all. That's actually, again, going back to raw video is HDR video. So your color space, and you're going to want to use that 2020 PQ importing. And then in Final Cut, you're going to want to make a wide gamut library that enables you to push HDR video out, which like Instagram and YouTube, they all support HDR video, and you can research that, all the screens that offer it, but it's something to consider. I export in HDR probably 50% of the time, the other 50% Rec 709, and you probably can't tell the difference in between it. But if you are capturing HDR video, think about that, which you're doing with 12-bit RAW video. You want to make sure that you are exposing your video properly. And if you don't have an external recorder, the video you're recording off the screen at the back of the camera is going to look like blown out shit. And you can see it in the histogram on the back, and it still looks like blown out crap, but you can see your levels fall within an acceptable range on that histogram. It's much better if you have an external monitor to do so. I'm going to give you an example of what it looks like on the back of the screen, what the histogram looks like, and what it looks like using an external recorder, what the histogram shows on that. And the big thing with that is going back to blowing your exposure. If you have to push or adjust your exposure in post, and you start getting all that grain, it's going to be a lot easier for you to shoot your video too dark, because it's going to look so blown out on the back of the camera. And I'm going to give you an example of that. So if you look at the back of the camera, everything looks blown out. If you look at the histogram on the back of the camera, it still looks pretty good, like you haven't clipped white per se. But then if you look at the exposure on the Atomos that I'm using, I have the monitor set up to monitor at PQ 2020, which is what we're going to import as. So you can see that the histogram information and the image on the back of the monitor is more just a representation of what we're capturing. And ultimately, a good rule of thumb is to expose as light as you can without clipping white, because you're going to retain all that color information in the shadows and in the darker areas. You're going to retain the detail in the darker areas. Whereas if you end up shooting and capturing at too low of an exposure, you can't create information where it is all black. There's just digitally nothing there, and that's where a lot of color or noise will come from in post. So that's just one thing to consider. The screen on the back of the camera, as far as I can tell, is Rec 709, which is SDR standard definition, and other external recorders. I think you can even hook your iPhone up to it, which is an HDR monitor, will give you a better representation of what you're actually capturing. And you really got to just trust the histogram on that point. It's just nice to be able to monitor in PQ 2020 and have a visual representation of that. And then you can kind of see the difference in the exposure, and just know that if you're overexposed on the back of the camera, you're probably going to be all right when you come back to edit it after the fact. It'll make more sense if you look at that stuff. I'm just rambling to the camera again. But again, not a YouTuber. I'm a full-time working photographer, and I just wanted to hop on here because this was a very helpful tool for me. When I got the Z8, it was a big disappointment to not be able to use the video codecs, because I purchased the camera to use those specific video codecs like 4K 120 and all that other stuff. And the good people at Color Finale have been great as far as responding to emails quickly and creating a product that absolutely 100% has benefited me greatly. So yeah, check them out. Hopefully this video is helpful for you. And if people liked it, maybe I'll make another video explaining more stuff about camera stuff. Hope you had a good day. See ya. Hope you had a good day. That's my sign off. Hope you had a good day. See ya.